Hello,
I thought we were already
audience.
live.
No.
I thought we were
Well,
already live.
I was sending
That's
out
why I was
this.
being so silly.
I thought you were just being full of joy. Silly me.
No. I was being performatively silly. But, uh, but fine. Fine. We will just be grim.
It's
Grim.
Halloween. We need to be darkly silly.
This is Halloween.
This is
Although,
Halloween. This is
but
Halloween.
when we talk about Halloween, it will have already been Halloween.
I know, which is
Those will be
which is
echoes of Halloween past.
yes. Yes.
Yeah. What's happening?
Not much. Rainy,
You wrote a
gross.
book.
I
How about that? How about
did.
a
I
book?
did. I did. So it's
Is
one of
that a
these
thing?
things where dealing with, so it's coming out from Penguin Random House, and they do everything well in advance. So like all the stuff and things, emotions that went through getting the book to like actually come to fruition was so long ago that me and my co-author Sandlin have been like, oh yeah, we have a book coming out this week. And it's just
Yeah.
really weird.
So apparently I'm louder than you. Balance us.
Okay, I can turn you down.
Balance the force. They
I
say that
can't
you are
balance the
half.
force.
You are half
Wow.
of my volume.
Mares eat oats. Mares eat oats. Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Mares eat oats and goats eat oats?
Dote. Mares eat oats and does eat oats. A kiddly divey too, wouldn't you? Mares eat
Eat
oats and
oats.
does eat oats.
Oats.
A kid will eat ivy too.
Okay.
You didn't
I
know
had
it?
no idea.
It's a tongue
No.
twister. Yeah, we used to
No.
sing it in choir. All right, in theory, our audio levels are closer to the same.
Prove it.
You
People
have
have
to
to
speak
confirm.
more.
Yeah, people have to confirm that we are similar. Are you having the same issue that I did where I was accidentally putting a mono microphone through a stereo channel?
No, I think this is literally just a matter of this isn't the computer I'm usually on, so the settings are
Okay.
weird.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's all it is. So I fussed with things. That doesn't mean I fussed with things enough. And your
So
head is so much bigger than mine right now.
is it just me, or do you suffer from technological gremlins vastly more than I do?
I think I have more bits and bobs, and the technological gremlins are directly proportional to the number of bits and bobs.
So just the number of bits and pieces that you're attempting to hack together into a coherent technology stack.
Yeah. This is
That
what
makes sense.
happens when you want to have a system that if I was on my studio computer gets used for a whole bunch of different setups.
Yeah.
And right now I'm on my laptop, which has the oomph to do it, but it's just like, I don't know these things you're plugging
Right.
into me. What are you
But
plugging into me?
yeah, but even
So,
that idea of having like all of your like having a computer, a studio computer fulfill a bunch of different roles is already in the danger zone.
I know.
I almost I like I'm definitely leaning towards a single purpose computer like and I'd rather go with something really cheap, but thou does not mess with this computer, right? Like this computer's job is to live stream video in this very specific way. And if no, and like there's nothing else. Like no, you can't write your on your word processor with it. No, you can't play video games on it. No, it does
so
one thing.
so my studio computer does one thing, but it has to be able to talk to multiple cameras and mics.
Yeah.
And And that's where things sometimes fail.
Yeah, but even that situation where someone was like, I want to use this configuration of microphones. Like, no, maybe you mix it externally and bring the audio in. But anyway, it just seems from my perspective, you are always wrestling a octopus of technology. But maybe that's what just keeps your life interesting.
Someone has to deal with a challenge every day. I guess I've chosen me.
You've chosen this is it. This is your hill. All right.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are wondering what it is you have stumbled into, I promise this is a live episode of Astronomy Cast. We are going to record an episode. It'll take us about 30 minutes, and then we will stick around and we will answer your questions about space and or astronomy. Okay, are you ready to go?
Yes, and
dark out there.
It's getting dark outside.
Okay.
You're farther north than I am.
No, just in the weather way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hello, Zach. I see you on Twitch. Okay, I am pressing all the record buttons.
I have also pressed record.
Hello. Wow. Okay, these levels are low. Okay, we're It's all right. Rich can deal with it.
Give me garbage audio. Okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
Astronomy Cast, episode 658, Space Exploration Horror Stories. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly fact-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain, the publisher of Universe Today. I've been a space and astronomy journalist for over 20 years. With me is Dr. Pamela Gay, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Happy Halloween today.
Happy Halloween. And you know what tomorrow is?
November 1st.
It's New Book Day.
New for you.
Yes, I have a book coming out, and my publishers amused me to no end in a very sick and sad and twisted way, because they're like, hey, we're starting to see all the influencers' pictures out there of your book. And I don't have a copy of my book to show you right now because they only sent copies to influencers. And I'm not enough of an influencer to get a copy of my book. But
of your own book.
Of my own book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
it's funny.
The publisher.
The publisher will come to you. We did this as well. And they're like, where do you want to see these books? And so I gave them a big list of all the people who I thought could help amplify the message. But in many cases, they're getting copies of the book in their hands before you get a copy of your own book. And they're like, thanks for sending me the new book, Fraser. I'm like, you should tell me what it's like.
Yeah.
I don't know. All I've seen are the pre-press. Well, congratulations. What is the book?
It's called The Moon. Great title. It's a kid's book, so we kept everything super simple. It looks at how we see the moon, what we see about the moon, the history of exploring the moon, and how today's kids are really going to be tomorrow's citizens of whatever lunar bases we end up building. So we're basically giving little kids a heads up on how big, hopefully, they will dream, and just tell them to dream as big as they can. And here's some scientific information to dream with.
Wow. Congratulations. Awesome work. Now, we're recording this episode on Halloween, so how could we resist but to take advantage of this opportunity? I mean, space is already terrifying enough, with the vast, endless emptiness, the incomprehensible mysteries, and the uncaring coldness. But here are some scary stories to spook it up a notch. And we'll talk about it in a second, but it's time for a break. And we're back. All right, Pamela, this is a classic Pamela-chosen episode. How do you want to tackle this? Give us some scary stories.
Well, why don't we start by looking at the weird stuff that astronauts have seen and heard, and try and explain exactly what it was.
Okay.
Does that work for you?
Yeah. Tell me when.
So Apollo 10. Apollo 10 is going to crop up more than once in this episode.
Right.
Apollo 10 starts out on their journey to be the first mission to go to the far side of the moon. They're orbiting the moon. They get to the far side of the moon and they hear this super weird whistling noise like...
So, one second. Didn't Apollo 8 go around the moon?
But Apollo 10 didn't land.
No.
It's the wrong
correct.
humans. Did Apollo 8 land on the moon? I feel like I should know this.
Apollo 11 landed on the moon. Apollo 10 was the one that they disconnected, went down a ways, and then came back up and docked again.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I'm making it hard to edit. All right. So let's start with Apollo 10. And I have no idea why this didn't happen to Apollo 8, but Apollo 10 reported that as they flew around the dark side of the moon, the far side of the moon, it's not actually dark, it's just what we don't see it.
Right.
They heard this super weird whistling spacey music.
What?
And yeah. And they came around the earth facing side and they're talking to the ground again. And this was a bit disconcerting.
So they're on the far side of the moon,
Yeah.
completely blocked from any radio communications that could be coming from the Earth. There should be no way that they could even be picking up radio waves from planet Earth.
Right. And there's this whistling music that sounds like what someone who didn't have a theremin but was trying really hard would create if they were like trying to create space music. And any guesses as to what it just might have been?
I mean, I'm guessing that was the first time. Well, no, I mean, they would have been in the shadow of the Earth because they would have orbited around the Earth a couple of times. And then they went out to the moon. So I'm guessing somehow they were in the shadow of the moon, but I don't know what. Something metal, some part of the spacecraft was creaking and groaning. What was it?
So they actually have these really good recordings of it, and it's coming off the radios, it turns out. They were hearing, in the absence of signals from Earth, they were hearing some sort of electric noise in the radio components that was what we now have as this classic radio noise from space, this whistling across all the different frequencies of hearing, not of the radio, but they heard it coming out of the radio. And so hearing this weird whistling music was apparently extremely creepy. They warned future missions to be prepared for this. Future missions said, "We are so grateful you warned us, because that was super creepy." And so it turns out that outer space itself will make radios sing, and it is creepy. But
and
not spooky, just creepy.
And is it because they were blocked from the Earth that this was happening? Huh.
Because normally you don't hear any of that because the signals from Earth are keeping everything occupied. The gain isn't trying to ramp itself
I sort
up.
of I kind of I'm sort of imagining a situation where you've got somebody who's on a microphone and it's a bad microphone and the software behind it, they're quiet. And so the software is like seeking for sound.
Yeah.
And it just keeps cranking the gain and cranking the gain until it just starts making these weird noises coming out of their microphone. And then when they speak again, then the sound comes back to normal, and then they're quiet, and then the gain cranks up again. That would be really scary. I gotta say, I can see why the future Apollo astronauts were like, "Thanks for letting us know," because that was unnerving. Like you can imagine, this is like a horror movie that they're in space, floating around. They go behind the far side of the moon, and then suddenly the radios come on and you hear this weird sound coming out of the radio.
Yeah, yeah.
Nicely done. That's a good story.
It's quite excellent. And
Yeah.
it had a reasonable explanation, but I mean there's lots of things that have reasonable explanations, but when you're first experiencing them and you don't know those explanations, you kind of want to go hide under your bed. But if you're on an Apollo capsule, there's nowhere to go. And the
Yeah.
noise was coming from inside the capsule, like the phone call coming from inside the house.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. What else you got?
So Story Musgrave is the poor guy. There are stories all over the internet reporting that Story Musgrave saw a couple of meter to several meter long snake or eel that was white and swimming through space. And some of these reportings go on to say that while you might blame it on being a hose or something, Story Musgrave, who is the most educated of all of our astronauts, reported that no, it was an alien looking eel no, even he in an interview with James Oberg for Omni magazine said, "Yeah, it really looked like there was an eel." And then guess what he said next?
But I knew it couldn't be.
He didn't
Right?
quite say that. He went on to say that it was probably a lost seal, a lost hose, something that came off of another spacecraft. Because when you're in space, you do see other things zipping past. He said that he was actually able to see the mirror when it was 28 miles away at one point.
Wow.
And so he thinks just saw some sort of a seal or hose that was in an orbit similar enough to the space shuttle that it seemed to be tracking the space shuttle swimming along the side. And just the thermo conditions of space, the leftover energy from whatever it had that sent it into space caused it to just appear to wiggle and swim, which is creepy enough,
That is
even
super
when you
creepy.
know what it is.
So he was looking out the window and then
Yes.
some object,
Yes.
probably human made debris, was on a similar orbit to the space station, or sorry, to the space shuttle.
Yeah.
I mean, that almost feels like it could have been like something. I mean, it wouldn't be like an upper stage because the shuttle doesn't have an upper stage exactly. Like the
And it was
shuttle
long and it
takes
was
off
long
its
and skinny.
main.
So
Yeah. And I'm just sort of thinking like if it could be something related. I'm sure people have been obsessing about what this could possibly be for decades.
and he saw it on
Um,
more than one mission.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now it's getting weird. All right. He's and have any other astronauts reported this?
Not specifically, just Story. But we
And
also
he's seen this
don't know
multiple
if he's
times.
the only one that was like peering out that
Yeah.
long. And so yeah.
Now I wonder if he needs to get his needed to get his eyes checked.
Well,
Parasites in his eyes or something.
that is definitely something rather grotesque to consider, but I'd rather think that he just had the misfortune of being on similar orbits more than once with the same.
Seeing space is big, and
I
seeing the same
know.
thing multiple times, that seems pretty ludicrous to me. All right. Well, we're going to talk about some more stuff in a second, but it's time for a break. And we're back. All right. There you go. Someone in the chat just said that someone got toilet paper stuck under their boot on the way to an EVA. That sounds right. A piece of toilet paper out in space. That sounds exactly what you would be seeing. All right, what else you got?
So we have all the weird things that astronauts saw and heard. There was a Chinese astronaut who perceived what seemed to be knocking on the outside door while he was in space. Yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
he was on the station and he heard something
He was
knocking on
in
the
a
outside of the
capsule.
station, or
This was back in
okay,
2003, pre-station. So you have Chinese astronaut in a capsule going around the Earth, and here's what sounds just like someone knocking on the door. And this freaked the poor guy out enough that he actually like edged up to the door and looked outside, and there was nothing to be seen. And
right.
other taikonauts have reported the same experience.
Mm. And he didn't like open the door
Oh,
to see who it
dude,
was.
no, you don't do that when there's vacuum
Again, that
outside. That's
feels like
just a bad idea.
this now is starting to feel like it's like a space horror story where someone just keeps hearing the knocking and then they just like fine open up the door and then they're sucked out into space. And it turns out it was just a piece of metal clinking against the outside of the
So that's
spacecraft.
some Solaris stuff right there. But in reality,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
suspect it was a heating and cooling, just like your oven sounds like it's knocking. That in all likelihood it was the spaceship's thermocycling, the space capsule's thermal cycling was causing what sounded like knocking
Hmm.
on the door. And since multiple
Yeah.
capsules all shared the same design, you would expect multiple astronauts to have this same disturbing experience.
So I get that happening here. So our place is has a metal roof and metal sides,
Yeah.
and so has all kinds of thermal expansion and contraction. And there will be times where I'll hear sounds right outside the front door, and I'll open up the front door and go take a look, and there's nothing. And it's just the building itself creaking and groaning and contracting and expanding in various changing temperatures. But it never you never get over it.
Right,
I don't know. There's like
right.
there's got to be something human, deeply human about being attuned to those kinds of sounds,
Our,
and always setting your hackles on
our,
edge. Yeah.
our house has steam radiators that ping and hiss.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
the same
totally.
thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. So loud. Very
and then there's
cool.
the creepy thing every single astronaut experiences. Can you guess?
Uh
You close your eyes.
well, yeah, of course, cosmic rays on their eyeballs.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
this can't be something that they were prepared for. The astronauts had the misfortune of just being in space, and you close your eyes for the darkness of sleep, and you keep getting these bright flashes coming at you randomly in different places in your vision. And it's just flashes of high energy particles working to uh, act damage on your retina. And yeah, yeah. Just like you get cosmic rays
And
on
so
CCD images, you can get them on your eyeballs.
right, and so you're out there in space, you're less protected by the magnetosphere of the Earth, and these cosmic rays are impacting your retina, the cells in your retina, and are causing flashes to be triggered to your brain, and you're actually taking eye damage as this is happening. And so this is almost like the opposite. Like the experience would be kind of cool that you would be seeing these flashes as you have your eyes closed, but the understanding of what is actually happening is the part that's really deeply unnerving. That
I
you are suffering, and those are just your retinas. Like you're getting hit across your entire body, your brain, your bones, your blood, your organs. Every part of your body is getting cosmic rays going through it. It's just you can only see the ones that are going through your retina.
I somehow feel like the first time you experience it, it's more creepy to see it than understand it in that one moment. But after that first moment, the understanding is creepier. But initially.
Yeah. Yep. That would be my concern is just like when you go to space, the clock is ticking and your body is wearing down, the various damages that are happening. You're losing your muscle mass, you're losing your bone mass, your fluids are redistributing, your eyesight is getting worse, you're getting increased radiation damage. I don't think I could think about anything else. Like I know for a
Yeah.
lot of people, like, oh yeah, I want to go to space. It's gonna be so exciting. But for me, going to space would be like start the clock. You are now in the death zone, like when you're climbing Mount Everest. So that would just be just, and that's why I did my intro at the beginning. Like just space itself is deeply terrifying, just at a baseline. All right, we're gonna talk about this some more, but it's time for another break, and we're back. All right, see, I'm freaked right out. Keep going.
So I think your comment on death from space is an excellent segue into the next thing that I did some Googling on. And I have to say, I found some of the creepiest wrong information on the internet. Not that that should surprise absolutely anybody.
Yeah.
So what I was trying to find out was I wanted to find out if there's any information on how you deal with dead bodies in space. It seemed appropriate for this particular episode. And somewhere along the path from what actually happened to what got written, the story became that there are mummified dead animals in orbit that get seen by astronauts.
What?
And this
Again,
is where
space is big.
I know, and this is where I feel the need to take a moment to step back and debunk. So first of all,
Okay.
yes, there have been a ton of animals that have died in space for various reasons, whether it be they were laboratory animals on the International Space Station that got sent back after being euthanized in space, got sent back through the atmosphere and burned up in the atmosphere, or they were early animals from early attempts at rocket flight where the animals didn't make it back to Earth, but eventually those capsules also burnt up in the atmosphere. Any critter that has died in space has either been brought back to Earth and studied in a laboratory or has been burnt up in the atmosphere. So to all of you who, like me, go and click on every one of these spookiest things in space headlines that are out there this glorious time of the year, understand that when they say space is filled with mummified dead animals, there may be one or two things out there that just managed to not come back down through the atmosphere yet. I have not been able to find documentation either direction. But things don't stay in low Earth orbit forever, so...
For more than a couple of years.
And anyways, the animals aren't free-floating, mummified death.
Okay. So is that a scary story, I guess?
It's a scary story if you don't know the truth, and time was needed. I mean, like, can you imagine you're a little kid, like the one reading my book that comes out tomorrow, that is trying to Google about what do astronauts see, and they find an article saying that astronauts in suborbital space flights see mummified dead animals. That's kind of disturbing.
Right. And the reality is that plenty of animals have died in space. They've just all burned up in the atmosphere or brought back down for further experimentation in cargo vessels.
Yeah.
And that no human body has ever been in space. Or there are no human remains orbiting right now.
As far
but
as we
there
know.
will be. Like when you think about the Apollo missions, I'm sure you've read that speech that Nixon was going to give if the astronauts fail, if their lander failed to take off again, the astronauts would just be stuck on the moon and then they would die of lack of oxygen. And
There's
so right now, and there's lots of spacecraft that have failed and are now floating in deep space. We don't know where they are. But so far, no humans have done that. But there will be a time when it will happen. And there will be people out there in
yeah.
space,
And I
dead.
just want to put the caveat on this of as far as we know, because there are other nations that launch rockets,
Hmm.
and there have always been unconfirmed rumors, but that's it.
Mm.
No one's ever been able to confirm them, and you can't really hide things orbiting the planet.
Yeah,
So
did they go beyond low Earth orbit? Like,
no,
did they send a? Did
not
the
not
Russians
that we
send a
know of.
cosmonaut off to
They
Mars?
did send turtles around the moon, and those came back safe.
Okay, all right,
So I
all
just
right.
so
Do you have time for one more?
yes, I do. So
Okay, you get
wow,
choose one more. That's all we have time for.
all right. So NASA doesn't have a public. This is what we do with dead bodies procedure. But Chris Hadfield reported that they have to go through contingency simulations where they pretend to be killed. So they take turns offing the different astronauts in these contingency sims and running through the how does this get handled? And the question of what do you do with the body is one of the things that always gets left unanswered when you ask an astronaut. But when you ask an engineer, a possible solution is brought up, which is you stick the astronaut in a body bag, you put them in space so they essentially freeze dry really fast. Then you use the
Yeah.
robotic arm to shake the bejesus out of that so they break into a million pieces, take up less room, you bring them on board, and then you figure out what to do.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Um. So there's a book. There's a book that they have on the International Space Station. It's this 1,000-page book about medicine,
Yes.
and they list all of the things that they're supposed to do. Like, what if they have a cavity? What if somebody has their appendix rupture, and so on. But I haven't looked through it to see what to do in case of death. I wonder if it's in there. It must be. There must be rules in there of
Every
what to do in
article
the
I
case of death.
found said that NASA does not have a standard procedure for dead bodies. So that may simply
Yeah.
be that none of the journalists dug hard enough, and this is one of those times when there's no publicly available procedure.
I'm gonna find it. Find it. I'm sure it exists. Yeah. Training manual. Okay. I'll look for it. Now I want to dig into it. All right. Well, this has been, I hope, appropriately spooky and scary for everyone. And so when you are contemplating the existential horror of an uncaring cosmos, you can take a moment to think about even scarier things on this hallowed eve. Thanks, Pamela.
Thank you, Fraser. And I forgot to open the file again. One moment, everyone, and I will thank everyone who needs thanked. Somewhere there's a file. Today is 10:31. All right. So thank you, Fraser, and thank you to all of our patrons out there who you are really the ones that we count on to keep this show going week after week, year after year. This week, I would like to thank in particular Corrine Dimtruck, Tim Garish, Benjamin Davies, Bart Flaherty, Brian Kelby, Dean, Arctic Fox, Nyla, Lou Zealand, Jordan Turner, Lee Harborn, Jason Kardukis, Ron Thurston, Robert Hundle, Kim Barron, Vitali, Paul Esposito, Arthur Latzhall, Frank Stewart, Ganesh Swarmathathon, Bob Zatzi, The Lonely Sand Person, Reuben McCarthy, Time Lord Iron, Daniel Donaldson, Ian Abdelia, and Jeff McDonald. And if you're on the fence about becoming part of our Patreon community, and I'm hoping you are, because the percentage of you that are part of our Patreon community is one of those things that I often find myself raising my eyebrow at. If you find yourself on the fence about joining, well, we are about to start posting audio without any advertisements at all for our patrons over on
Nice.
patreon.com/astronomycast. So you can get all of our episodes ad-free if you join our
Wonderful.
Patreon.
Thanks, Pamela.
Thank you, Fraser. Bye-bye. And then they saved.
So I just loaded up the International Space Station Emergency Medical Manual. It is 1,051 pages. I searched for remains, didn't find anything. I searched for death. I didn't find anything. I searched for corpse. I didn't find anything. And I didn't bother searching for body.
Yeah, that one you will get too many false positives.
Exactly. All right. So Physics Police asks, are you watching The Peripheral? I am. Are you watching it?
No, what is it?
So The Peripheral is a show on Amazon Prime about this woman who is really good at online video in the near future. And so she's really good at online video games, like virtual reality online games. And so she's been filling in for her brother, who isn't as good as she is. And so she's been filling in his contracts. He's not good enough. And so she uses this peripheral device to access new experimental virtual reality sim. But all is not as it seems. And yeah. And so the peripheral doesn't do what she thinks it's going to do, and the consequences get weird. It's okay. There's some stuff like I don't want to spoil it. So what I like about it is that it's clearly like a combination between the BBC or like some kind of British group and Americans, or maybe it's all British. So it has a very British styling. So, but it has a level of over dramatization that Doctor Who does.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Doctor Who will get a little, like some of the characters in Doctor Who will be overly dramatic.
Yeah.
Unnecessarily dramatic.
They eat the scenery.
Eating the scenery. That is exactly it. And so that part is stupid. But at the same time, there is a standard set of tropes that will happen in an American show about this character's job is to die. This character's job is to make a noble sacrifice for that character.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen. In fact, the supporting characters end up being more competent than you had ever had any idea that they would be, and become this like everybody's got their shit together. And so it's kind of amazing.
Cool.
And you're just like, whoa, wait a second. You were supposed to die to inspire our hero to dig deep and do uncomfortable things. But in fact, not only did you not die, you handled yourself incredibly well in a stressful situation and demonstrated that you are deeply competent at what you do. And holy cow, this is really great. So it's very weird because you're like, you know, my wife and I were like, okay, you know, just like that person's doomed, this person's boned, right?
Right.
But no, they survive and they yeah. So it's so far anyway. I'm sure that maybe the death comes, the noble sacrifice comes later, but I do enjoy, and it's the same thing. Like I really enjoy watching, say, Korean. I've mentioned this in the past.
Yeah.
Like I really like Korean television and movies. I really like Japanese stuff. I mean, even like Australia, New Zealand, right? New Zealand comedies, because there's a series of memes and themes that you're just not familiar with. And so you you think the story's going to go one way and it doesn't go that way. It goes a different way. And you're surprised and delighted
Yeah.
that it's not falling down these trails that are just such well-worn ruts in American television.
Yeah.
And so yeah. And so still, I mean, I'm starting to see the way, say, Korean television plays out again and again, but um but still, it's, we call it the Korean ending, because it's always bad. Like, like nobody gets what they want.
Yeah.
Everybody's worse off. Maybe somebody gets like a minor victory. There's like somebody gets a partially happy story. That's it. That's the Korean ending. So anyway, and so this is great. I'm really enjoying it. And it's based on a William Gibson story. So the bones are there. And so you've got these bits and pieces. Like if you enjoyed reading Neuromancer,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and sort of the idea of technologically augmented people being competent,
Okay.
it's pretty great. Yeah, I'm liking it. So I'm on the fence right now, but so far I was being prepared to hate, because again, it was overly, just scenery chewing was really turning me off in the first episode. But then I was like, I turned to my wife and I'm like, oh, crap, did you see that? That person's supposed to be dead. Not only are they dead, they kicked ass. So it was good. All right. Here's the next question. Ben Kill asks, are either of you familiar with the research of biologist Michael Levin? Recent interview with Lex Friedman was fascinating.
No.
No. Let me see.
Sorry.
Yeah. Done. Synthetic biology. Interesting. Neat. I should interview him.
Yeah. I suddenly
Man,
can't
like,
stop yawning.
okay.
I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna make Lex Friedman mad. But I try to subscribe to his podcast. I've tried on several occasions and I just keep unsubscribing. And I love the guests and I love his enthusiasm, but I find he doesn't dig deep enough to get to the interesting places. So he either lets his guests talk about the things that they want to talk about without being taken to places which are, what's the new and interesting and complicated that the layperson would really like to know about. And I find his instinct on that is just not tuned yet. And because has such a wide variety of guests that he brings on, it's tricky. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hear his interviews with I can't listen to his interviews with space people. I can't do it because he just won't go deep enough. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. So I will I'll see about interviewing him. Sounds great. But he sure knows he gets the best guests. He just gets top-notch guests who I really want to talk to. So I'm jealous. I guess we didn't get a chance to mention this. So I interviewed Lee Feinberg, who is the senior optics engineer for the James Webb.
Yeah.
And he gave me a bunch of nuggets.
Any news on the spectrograph that isn't being talked about?
The MIRI instrument, yeah. So they think they've got the fix.
Okay.
So they're going to try and roll it out soon-ish, but it's not a slam dunk yet.
Yeah.
The the micrometeorite damage was more unnerving than I think was more than they had planned for, and actually was a blind spot in their preparation. But there was no solution to it. Like there was no way
No.
to solve the problem. But so the fix is that they can turn the telescope forward as it's in its orbit,
Mm-hmm.
and then debris is hitting it at an extra 30 kilometers per second in velocity, or they can turn it the other way and have it observe tailward, trailward. I
Right.
forget the term they
Right.
use. So that then the only debris that can hit it is the stuff that's coming out of that's matching its
Moving.
orbit,
Yeah.
and so you dramatically decrease the velocity of the debris,
Yeah.
but you have to change the orientation of the telescope to be able to observe various parts of the sky.
Right.
So it could be in the next cycle they'll change the orientation of the telescope so that they're trying to do as many of their observations as possible downstream, like have the telescope facing back away from its orbit as much as possible. So that's the plan to deal with them, because there's never been an open telescope before, right? Hubble, they're all tubes with the telescope optics down at the bottom, and you can protect them
Right.
with
Tubes.
Kevlar and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But JWST is the first telescope that's ever been built that is open like this.
And it
there's
can
just no way to
get
protect
things
it.
coming at it from 180 degrees, basically. 'Cause
Mhm.
you can even, the worst case would be something skipping across the mirrors like a skipping stone.
Yeah. And so it's just like it's a risk that no other telescope faces, and the amount of debris that's out there, I think, was, or at least the chance of a big piece of debris hitting was surprising.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting piece of news. And the other interesting piece of news was he said that the orbital insertion from the rocket from the Ariane 5 was so good that actually they're looking at probably 25 years or more, like maybe
Good.
30 years of time with JWST in orbit.
I just want it to get as many cycles of WR 140 as it can.
Sure. Well, there you go. 30 years of it. 30 tries at WR40.
That's
Which
4
would be
orbits.
pretty great.
4 orbits? 3.5 orbits.
Is that how long it takes to go around the star? I guess 8 years?
It's 7.93 is
okay.
the, yeah.
Yeah. Paul Took asks, is the inside of a comet or asteroid enough protection from radiation for extremophiles to live inside of, or is it only inside of planets that could work?
Some extremophiles just don't care. I'm not going to put any limits on what any extremophile can do. I have hit that point.
But if you have an extremophile, sure. But if you have like a, I don't know, Deinococcus radiodurans, cyanobacteria, you put it 5 meters down on an asteroid or a comet, is it protected from space?
Yes. You don't even have to go that far.
1 meter.
Yeah, that should be enough.
Yeah. Yep. And in fact, the thing that would be affecting life on the underground on, say, Mars or the Earth is the radiation inside the planet, and you probably won't get that inside a small asteroid or comet.
Not to the same degree. I mean, everything at a certain point has the same constituent parts to begin with, but...
Right. There's a background radiation that just comes from regular matter, yeah.
Well, and there's going to be radioactive materials in any object. It's just, there's probably not enough to matter in that kind of an object.
Yep. Hal McKinney asks, how can the concept of an infinitely small black hole singularity coexist with the Pauli exclusion principle? Is this a weakness of general relativity?
Not it.
What? Everyone with a PhD in astronomy put up their hand. Okay, so let's see if I can dismantle the
fine.
question. Let me
Okay.
try to dismantle the question, and then you can jump in.
All
So
right.
Hal is asking, like, you have the Pauli exclusion principle that says that you
Yes.
can't mash
You
electrons and
can't.
protons. You can't mash neutrons to be in the same place, right?
You can't have neutrons. No. You can't have uh, fermions. Uh, fermions. I believe it's fermions. Um, whatever an electron is, you can have two with the same spin in the same orbital. They have to have opposing orbitals.
Right.
But we don't know how to describe the material that's inside of a black hole. And
Right.
if it's some sort of like pure energy, a quark soup, uh, we're looking at it. It may be particles that don't have that kind of that aren't fermions, basically.
Right. So the gist being, inside a black hole, some force has overcome the Pauli exclusion principle, and now you have a black hole.
Yeah.
What that is,
And
we don't know.
yeah.
So, the black hole itself is the evidence that it is possible to compress something below more than overcome the Pauli exclusion principle.
And the
The reason you get
reason
neutron stars is because of that,
they're
but you can
leptons.
get smaller.
So
You
what
can get smaller
happens
than
is with the electron degeneracy pressure supporting white dwarfs, all the electrons are like, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are we all in different shells? Okay, we're all in different shells. Different spins? Okay, we're good. And so you end up with this electron degenerate gas that is acting essentially as though the white dwarf is a single atom. And that's
right.
why white dwarfs are roughly the size of the moon. And then neutron stars, which have higher mass, are leptons, so they don't have that okay, how are you all, they just go
Right.
squish. They just go squish.
Right. Right.
Eh,
How do we keep our electrons in order? By not having any.
correct.
Right. Yeah. Everything's a
So,
neutron
yeah.
now. Okay. So somehow is the answer to that question. How does it do it? It just does it.
We have to know what the particles are to be able to answer these things. And until we can tell you what's inside, all I can say is it's not fermions.
Yeah. Hal McKinney says, I wonder how technologically feasible it would be for JWST 2.0 to pack a few extra hex mirrors so that it can robotically fix itself. So we
Yeah,
talked
no,
about
we're
this in
not
my
there.
interview as well, about this idea of on-orbit construction of space telescopes. And Lee doesn't think it's going to happen in the next round because it's still very complicated and you want to test the whole thing as a unit time after
And the
time after
weight
time.
and energy it adds. And if you think about it, the redistribution of mass that has to occur to go lift the mirror out, move it somewhere, it's you're changing your center of mass through all those different motions, and that is just a
Yeah,
layered
like
complexity.
the level of, like, the tolerances are so fine at this point that they had to calculate the temperature change that you would experience from various instruments on board the telescope, heating and cooling things, and that would change the shape of the mirrors in a way that made the telescope better or worse. So it is an extremely like, they needed to have something that they could just test again and again and again at different temperature regimes and really simulate what it was going to be like. But this interview that I have with Lee Feinberg is going to blow everybody's minds, because we talk about what comes after JWST. We talk about LUVOIR and his ideas for LUVOIR, and then you realize why he's got this job, right? Like, why has the same guy been there over, viewing the optics system of the JWST? And I think he worked on Hubble too. Oh, because he's he's
that
really
guy.
good at this.
Yeah.
He's that guy. Yeah, exactly. And so later on, when we talk about the kinds of technologies he's excited about, he's looking at quantum telescopes. Like
Dang.
when you gather photons in a telescope, you are recording the amplitude of the photon and then you're throwing it out. But he says, well, actually, there's a ton of quantum data that's being transmitted by a photon, like all kinds of stuff, not just the how bright the photon is or the color, right? And he says, what if you gathered all that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we know how to teleport photons. We know how to gather photons in two locations and then interfere them together, after the fact, even
Yeah.
if they're not being recorded in real time. So his future is like telescopes that record photons. They're separated by tens of thousands of kilometers together. They're transporting the photon quantum state to a ground computer, a quantum computer that is performing quantum calculations on the data and creating an interferometer of any size you want in any wavelength you want after the fact. It doesn't need to be in real time. You just feed the data feed from one quantum telescope. You mash them together, and it lines up the wavefronts, and then collapses them into a single image that is the size of their distance apart from each other.
Dang.
As a baseline. Yeah, you just. And he goes, like, I think we can make a telescope that would give us a megapixel image of a exoplanet like Earth, like another Earth, with this. And I'm like, okay, so like the solar gravitational lens, where you fly this telescope out to 1,000 AU. And he goes, yeah, but you wouldn't have to fly it out to 1,000 AU, and you could point it at anything you like, as opposed to having it only be able to look at this one planet.
So when is your interview going live?
Oh, probably in a couple of days. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to be keeping an eye out for that and adding it to my must-watch list.
Yeah, you'll love it. I was just like, again, it was just like, how's Webb doing? Webb's doing great. What are all the challenges? Here's all the challenges. What comes next? What comes after that? And then what comes after that? It was so great. Yeah, it was a wonderful conversation. So yeah, it was really exciting. And it's long. So he was really generous with his time.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. We should wrap things up. So thank you everyone for joining us today, both watching us both on YouTube and on Twitch. Thanks to all the moderators. Thanks to the entire team of people who help us produce and engineer and edit this show after the fact. Thank you, Pamela, for bringing the brain. We will see all of you next week. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.